Let us end the debate of Kryptonians versus Viltrumites, a comparison that truly is not very fair. Who, my friends, is stronger, the Viltrumites or the Kryptonians? Each of the races are widely regarded as some of the strongest entities in their universes. Each has provided some of the most powerful feats and warriors in their universes as well. While they are very similar in many respects, there are a few key differences that tip the scales. And today, my friends, we're going to analyze exactly what those are. Kryptonian versus Viltrumite. The aspect we'd like to talk about to begin this is their different environments and the impact that this has on their levels of power. Kryptonians in particular are vulnerable to changes in their atmosphere, and this can drastically impact how strong they are on any given planet. Kryptonians feed off of the radiation that surrounds them, and in most cases, this comes in the form of solar radiation. Younger, yellow suns provide much more nourishment and power to Kryptonians on planets such as Earth, and this is why Superman is regarded as one of the strongest heroes on his adopted world. On Krypton, however, Kryptonians aren't much different than regular humans, with Krypton's red sun and much stronger gravity, nullifying any effects that Kryptonians see on Earth. Viltrumites, however, are this powerful by nature, and it doesn't matter where they go in the universe, they will always be this strong. This does have a flip side to it, however, because it means that Kryptonians have much more potential than Viltrumites do. And when I say more potential, I mean a lot more potential. Let's take for example the story of Superman Prime, one who drifted the cosmos for upwards of 800 years after leaving Earth. In addition to this, he spent 15,000 years at the center of the Earth's sun, absorbing more solar radiation than any other Kryptonian, and he is one of the most powerful versions of the Superman character ever. Superman Prime clearly dwarfs any Viltrumite in power. In fact, he could take on every single one of them at the same time, and he would barely break a sweat. This iteration of Superman is the ultimate of a Kryptonian. Standard Kryptonians also have an array of energy-based powers that Viltrumites do not. Their natural abilities to absorb energy allows them to produce things such as heat vision, which is perhaps the most iconic of all of Superman's powers. Going further, Viltrumites don't show any indication that they have super breath, X-ray vision, or other powers that Kryptonians naturally have. This may offer Kryptonians a tactical advantage in this area since they have more in their arsenal in terms of power, rather than just raw power. With all of that said, 1-to-1, it's far more likely that Viltrumites will have more experience than a common Kryptonian, as Viltrumites are far older than even the most experienced Kryptonians that we know of. Omni-Man himself is around 2,000 years old, and has served as an officer in the Viltrumite army for the vast majority of his lifespan, meaning that just his experience is far beyond the average Kryptonian. This applies to every Viltrumite in the army beyond just Omni-Man though, as they all have hundreds of years of combat training and experience, implying that they are likely to be much better hand-to-hand fighters than any Kryptonian. Many Kryptonians also have to adapt to the environment that they land in, and this period of time adjusting can be incredibly detrimental. Superman has come face to face with malevolent Kryptonians before, nearly all of them with better combat training than that of Clark. Superman, though, had home field advantage. His acclimation to the human atmosphere meant that he's honed his powers for years, and this can oftentimes prove to be the deciding factor between himself and invading Kryptonians who don't have the same level of experience with their new power. As they absorb solar radiation, they become stronger, but have to get used to this newfound strength before they learn how to wield it effectively, something that Superman does not have to do. But again, this is not a comparison between the Viltrumites and Superman. This is Viltrumites versus Kryptonians. Another surprising attribute that leans in the Viltrumites' favor is Kryptonians do not have control of the energy that they are absorbing. This can be used against them by changing the location of the fight drastically. This doesn't just mean introducing kryptonite, but rather any form of harmful radiation that will be soaked into the Kryptonian cells and that they cannot actively repel. This could be soaked into the very cells and could harm them depending on the circumstances. Some versions of Superman have even been weakened when put into extreme nuclear environments. Depending on the story, Superman has been susceptible to nuclear armaments because of their radioactive output. And in other depictions, this weakness is completely missing entirely. This doesn't mean though that Viltrumites are free of weaknesses themselves though, as they can be most effectively combated by taking advantage of vulnerabilities to their inner ear. Their ears are not only hypersensitive to sound, but for their sense of equilibrium as well, especially when they fly. We know that as of the first half of Invincible Season 2, Cecil is working on a sonic-based weapon to combat Viltrumite soldiers, and the comics explore this very same concept much more in depth. In Invincible number 111, Rex Robot attacks Mark with a sonic-based cannon, and it's made clear that prolonged exposure of this could actually kill Mark. Other Viltrumites are faced with this very same weakness. In Invincible 100, David Anders is able to even paralyze Mark by taking advantage of certain frequencies that he is able to figure out, but he seems to be one of the only people on the entire planet who knows about this Viltrumite weakness. What's important about Viltrumites though, is that their physical durability and incredible healing properties offer them some resistance from blunt and piercing attacks, but this healing factor can be broken down over time. If you can get around a Viltrumite's natural healing factor, then the right enemy can stand a substantial chance at overpowering a Viltrumite warrior. The poison of the Klaxis plant for one, when ingested, can weaken a Viltrumite from the inside out, making their near impervious skin essentially mean nothing. This poison also damages the rate at which Viltrumites can heal, making them far more vulnerable to external attacks. But even without access to something like the Klaxis plant, there are other ways to weaken a Viltrumite's skin. The most ubiquitous way to harm a Viltrumite is through extreme heat, with the heat weakening their healing factor as well. In Invincible 140, Mark battles Thrag at the center of Earth's sun, and this begins to erode his healing factor until Mark can gain the upper hand. This means that one of the Kryptonians' major strengths just happens to be a Viltrumite's greatest weakness, that being access and utility of intense solar radiation. If a Kryptonian can generate enough heat to wear down a Viltrumite's healing factor, then they will be able to overpower them depending on the respective environment that the battle takes place. Since Kryptonians are so flexible in terms of their power scaling, the circumstances regarding this hypothetical battle play a huge part in determining the victor. This also comes down to the individual Kryptonian, since Viltrumite culture is so vastly different. Overall though, Kryptonians falter in terms of experience and utility, and they would obviously lose if they were on a planet that didn't saturate them with proper energy. They simply do not have the same level of combat experience as Viltrumites due to their incredibly long lifespan and culture of conquest, putting Kryptonians at a disadvantage by default. Finding a perfect location like this though is very much easier said than done. And even if a Kryptonian is severely weakened by the energy that they're absorbing, they are clearly not out of the fight. And the ceiling for a Kryptonian's power level and that of a Viltrumite are literally not even in the same league. Not to mention the Kryptonian's ability to generate extreme heat also happens to be one of the Viltrumite's major weaknesses. In every case, as Stan Lee famously said, the battle ultimately comes down to who the rider wants to win. But it seems that in a general scale, Viltrumites as a race seem to have more advantages to Kryptonians hand to hand. With the Viltrumites, we're looking at some of the strongest warriors that have ever existed in their universe. Some of the most powerful individuals, planet destroyers. But Superman Prime is a literal god. Randomly generating a fight could result in either's advantage. It all has to do with what each character knows and where they are. However, generating this fight with complete randomness in mind, more times than not, the Kryptonian will have the advantage. The Viltrumites are better trained, more likely than not better fighters, but the sheer power of a Kryptonian is tough to match up against. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this evaluation? Do you think that the Viltrumites hold a default advantage over most Kryptonians, and that if a fight was randomly generated 1v1, that the Viltrumites could have a chance at stopping the Kryptonians, or vice versa? Thank you so much for visiting the channel today, my friends, and I'll hopefully see you in another video soon.